Okay, this is from the book John McDougall, The Doctor Who Fought for You by me, Pete Rogers. We're on chapter 4, Dr. McDougall's medical achievements. Okay, so we start out with what did Dr. McDougall do? He basically, the biggest thing that he did was he provided a systematic, rational approach to health, to understand health, with the starch based vegan diet at the center of it. And he explained how starch works. If you notice, if you listen to lots of these other nutrition doctors around, they'll tell you eat a plant-based diet. But they don't specifically say starch, which in my opinion is a weakness of what they're saying. Say starch so the person knows what to do. McDougall figured out that this was the most important variable for determining whether people are healthy. And I would even say that, I made up this little phrase here: starch is what you do, epidemiology is how you know it's true. Because you're going to hear people like the paleo keto carnivore type saying, oh, there's no randomized control trial for this or that. And they're going to say epidemiology is bogus. But the reason why they say epidemiology is bogus is because it proves that they're wrong. One of the things that makes data more reliable is if you have a big sample set and if you have a long follow-up on the people. And like I said, you can't beat what you've got with epidemiology. Look at the people in Asia that were eating a rice-based diet, like China and Japan and stuff, for who knows how many hundreds or thousands of years. When they're eating that diet, they're eating up to like 90% of their calories from white rice, which has 1% of its calories from fat. A billion out of a billion are skinny. You can't beat that. There's like no such thing as a fat person. When I lived in California, a lot of these freshly arrived Asians, people who are eating their rice diets, they're all skinny. I never saw a fat one back in those days. Dr. McDougall had figured this out too, and Dr. McDougall would say, you can see the truth. And he mentioned that when you look at an Asian family, the grandparents would be all skinny and healthy, eating their rice-based traditional diet. Then the middle-aged ones who were partly westernized in their diet would be a little fatter and sicker. And then the kids would be little blimps, Oompa Loompas, fat like the American kids from eating all the junk food. So eating fat food makes you fat. Okay, it's pretty simple. And all these populations that used to be healthy, like Japan, Okinawa, as they become progressively more westernized, they get fatter and sicker. And I like the rhyme. Starch is what you do. Epidemiology is how you know it's true. Anything with a rhyme is easier to remember. And those are the great secrets of health. I've been a doctor over 30 years. I can tell you the most important thing I ever learned was humans should eat a starch-based diet. If they do that, they never get most of these diseases. It tells you what to do. And McDougall also said, when somebody's sick and they don't know where to start, they're confused or overwhelmed, he said, just focus on eating 90% of your calories from starch. If you do that, most of your problems will get better. The ones that are curable, okay? And then get 5% of your calories from fruits and vegetables, okay? And basically, starch makes you skinny. Those skinny people eating starch don't get diabetes. They don't get hypertension. And because they don't get diabetes and hypertension and they don't get fat, they don't get atherosclerosis. That's the main problems, Diabetes and hypertension are the gateway diseases for all these other problems. Okay, they also have a really low risk of cancer, and simplicity is a good sign. Like Schopenhauer had said, simplicity is a mark of truth. It works, and it has to make sense. Okay, here's a good quote by Arthur Schopenhauer: "Simplicity has always been held to be a mark of truth. It is also a mark of genius. Students and learned persons of all sorts and every age aim as a rule at acquiring information rather than insight. Information is only a means towards insight, and it's of little value by itself. For the man who studies to gain insight, books and studies are merely rungs on the ladder in which he climbs to the summit of wisdom. Thinking in search of insight is what makes a man a philosopher. The object of science is to recognize the many in the one, to perceive the rules in any given example, and not to go on counting up facts ad infinitum." Yeah, so basically that means, what more do you want? Eat starch, okay? It's almost too simple to be true, but it's obvious. If you go to the zoo, the zookeeper knows what to feed the chimp, okay, or the other animals. Human doctors really ought to know what to feed people, but they don't. It's not taught for all the reasons we talked about, because there's no money in it. Starch is a polymer of glucose, stretches the stomach because it's low caloric density, and you get like 1 calorie per gram. Fat's like 9 calories per gram. Sugar would be like 4 calories per gram of pure carbohydrate. So because of that, stretches the stomach, early satisfaction of hunger, and then it takes a lot of time for the intestinal enzymes to separate the fiber from the glucose, so you get slow absorption, relatively normal blood glucose, only a slight spike in it for a prolonged amount of time. So you satisfy your hunger with the fewest number of calories. It keeps you healthy. It has the effect of being like a slow release energy people. McDougall figured this out in every way you could figure it out, and he taught everybody this. And that's why he had the greatest improvement effect on health of anybody, any doctor who ever lived. Okay, McDougall says starch is the best way to satisfy hunger. Yeah, fruits I think are good, but they don't satisfy hunger as well as starch does. Okay, and then he also proceeded to explain it in every possible way. Other things about starch: they store well, they're cheap, they're the healthiest food. They don't tend to accumulate toxic chemicals the way animal foods do. Potatoes and sweet potatoes are complete because they're tubers growing out of the ground. They have everything except vitamin B12. Grains and legumes tend to be short in vitamins A and C. Fruits and vegetables provide plenty of A and C to supplement them. Epidemiology shows that giant populations all over the world, as Dr. McDougall said, all healthy, all large healthy populations eat a starch-based diet. There's no exceptions. There's no such thing as a fruitarian population, even though fruits, I think, are better. I think he actually undervalued fruits a little bit, but we're not going to get into that right now. The research study and the data from Kempner, Burkett, Blankenhorn himself, Pritikin, Campbell, and Swank, it all shows a plant-based diet works best. Migration studies, like we just talked about, the Okinawa people, the Japanese people, when they go to Hawaii, they start getting a little westernized, fatter and sicker. Then they go to California, more westernized, fatter and sicker. The more westernized their diet, the fatter and sicker they become, any population. And it's always that way. The old traditional plant-based diets are the healthiest, and the more they move towards a westernized diet, the fatter and sicker they become. The average vegan Seventh-day Adventist male is to be about 85 and female to about 89. And McDougall worked with them, and he said that they weren't even as healthy as they could have been, such that it implied that if people really followed these diets, the average life expectancy would probably be higher than these numbers. That's the highest well-documented recorded diet in the literature that I'm aware of. Okay, let's see. Oldest living person in history ever was that French lady. She lived 122 years of age. The Bible has thought people can live to about 70 for a long time. In Psalms, part of the Old Testament, it says 70 years are given to us, and some may even live to 80. Also, comparative anatomy shown that our physiology fits that of a plant eater. Our jaw can go side to side. We don't make vitamin C. We got a long intestinal tract. Okay, jaw going side to side is to grind food, unlike a carnivore has a big bite. You look at military histories, Alexander the Great, the gladiators, the barley men, Julius Caesar, the Roman soldier diet. You can just eat a diet of plant foods. You got more energy. They analyzed the bones of gladiators. McDougall did a lot of work on studying all the diets of these different populations, showing that the Maasai, for example, and the Inuit Eskimos were not that healthy. If you look at athletes for endurance, the best runners eat these plant-based diets, like the Kenyans and the Tarahumari, tons and tons of corn. Carl Lewis, the 9-time Olympic gold medalist, he was sort of having a slump in his career, and he went to the McDougall diet, and he came back and he set records and he improved. Paleontology studies also show it, the mummy studies, etc. Here's one reference, Sutherland, about atherosclerosis through 4,000 years of history. It used to be only the pharaoh, the kings and queens could eat the high-fat diets. Other people couldn't afford all those animal foods. And also your personal experience, you'll see it if you give it a try for a couple months, is what makes you healthiest. Exercise is good, but in these populations, sedentary people who eat the right diet, they're still skinny and pretty healthy. It's not genetic, because the same populations, like we said, when they migrate to a westernized diet, they get fat and sick. Okay. Then I got a whole bunch of this epidemiology stuff. I'll do those in a separate lecture, so we'll just leave that for now. So we'll just call this part 1. Hope that was helpful.